Before I begin, I've been asked to make a few announcements, so if you can just be patient for just a moment. First, the class committee would like to announce this year's senior class gift, a toaster oven. Unfortunately, the university had to return it. Apparently, the class of '86 gave them one just like it. Second, a note from the registrar. For all graduating seniors, Friday is the very last day you can change your field of concentration or house affiliation. And finally, there's a phone message here for Dean Spence. Dean Spence? A Mr. Bowen from New Jersey called. Said he wanted to thank you for the large, generous donation to the Princeton Faculty Club, but they can't refund it. Members of the senior class, parents, guests, respected faculty, not so respected faculty, and members of the Harvard community. I'd like to welcome you all here today and express a special greeting to the Harvard alumni, especially those who run middle to large-sized investment banks. My name is Chris Georges. That's Georges. Group 2, 710 verbal, 680 math. HSA bartending. I'd also like to express my pleasure in sharing the stage with today's honored guest speaker, the Duke. A man who I feel is one of the most innovative and exciting jazz musicians of all time. The first time I saw Duke Ellington was in a jazz club in New Orleans, and a jazz... Excuse me. How embarrassing. I'm gonna start again. That's okay. Hi. Members of the senior class, parents, guests, and faculty, I'd like to welcome you all here today and express a special greeting to Governor Michael Dukakis. What can I say about this man? I don't know. My task today is to place in perspective the past 4 years. My topic is the Harvard experience, or what I did between my summer vacations. Looking back, each of the past 4 years has had a unique character for the class of '87. Freshman year, we faced comps, tryouts, and the challenge of passing the QRR. My Harvard experience began in the business school parking lot. Here I am, I proudly thought to myself, at Harvard, one of the top 50 universities in the nation. I was immediately accosted by 2 HSA upperclassmen who sold me a Harvard hat, a Harvard t-shirt, and $500 worth of Harvard education insurance. They told me if I was not intellectually satisfied after 4 years, Mutual of Omaha and HSA would refund my tuition in full. I look forward to collecting my $67,000 after tomorrow's ceremonies. More important, freshman year was a time of new academic challenges, like the core curriculum. I remember the first course I took was Lit and Arts B16, Modern Art and Abstraction. I did my 15-page paper on Picasso's La Guernica and came to the conclusion it was a Renoir. I got an A. I lived over in Weld, and there were 3 members in our rooming group. There was Joel, who was a typical government concentrator, the type of guy who would highlight the reserve reading at Lamont Library in black marker. And there was Nick, who came from a long Harvard line. His real name was Nicholas Lowell Winthrop Courier House Grill III. We all had set high goals. I was pre-med, and Joel was pre-law, and Nick was premature. I suppose the only real problem I had freshman year was poor advising. I had a proctor who was always giving me silly motherly advice, telling me things like, Chris, if a strange man comes up to you and offers you money and a ride in his car, go. So I complained to Dean Moses, but he was virtually impossible to get in touch with. He had one of those phone answering machines. His message was a recording of a busy signal. In the spring, of course, we were assigned to our houses. And while everyone I knew was going off to Leverett or Kirkland, I had to be assigned to a women's college far from the center of campus. But I grew to like Wellesley. Actually, I was always around my friends from Kirkland House. The truth is, I blocked with a group of 8, and we were all sent to North House. Some fled to Canada. One guy, he changed his name to Biff, gone to Elliott House. One went straight to Mutual of Omaha and cashed in his insurance policy. Finally, concerning freshman year, I think it's important to quickly point out some of the advantages of the much criticized XBAS program. Enough said. Sophomore year, there were tutorials, varsity sports, and the increasing challenge of passing the QRR. Sophomore year at North House turned out well, except we were still pretty bitter about not having our own fireplace, so we bought one. It was a microwave fireplace, and we could lay in front of it for the evening and be done in 6 minutes. In the spring, some of us became part of a deeper Harvard tradition. My roommate, for example, was punched by the Fox Club, and I was punched by the Paeta. By all of them. Actually, I had attended this wild party they had thrown, and I was sitting near the rear of the room, and these 4 big-armed guys come up to me, and I ignored them, I looked down, I continued reading Weber, and one of them said something to me, and I looked up, and I surprised myself, and I said that I disapproved of their conduct, and I believed I would have to report them to the proper authorities. When I got out of traction, I decided to make a deeper commitment to an extracurricular. I originally auditioned for a play with the Loeb's Experimental Theater. It was a musical interpretation of the 1983 federal budget. I played a singing W-2 form. After acting, I tried journalism. I comped news for Harvard's most popular weekly newspaper, The Square Deal. But they caught me in the square, handing them out 10 at a time, so they cut me. And I took the advice of some of my friends, and I tried writing fiction, comp news for the Crimson, and... Actually, I have a lot of respect for the Crimson. After all, how many college newspapers are read not only by the editors, but by many of their parents as well? Junior year was a time of assuming new leadership roles and taking junior seminars and one more shot at the QRR. It was also a year of controversy, such as when the university barred some of the homeless from the Leverett steam grates. Technically, however, they were right. University rules prohibit anyone from receiving heat in the winter. I also found myself becoming more of a serious scholar. Junior year, I took Moral Reasoning 22, Justice, with Mike Sandel, but it was, someone else took it. But it was a bit too crowded for my liking. In fact, there were people there that Buddy Fletcher didn't know, but just a couple, just a couple. So I dropped it. I took another course. It was Moral Reasoning 16, a course where the professor spent 12 weeks getting into these deep philosophical arguments and proved I didn't exist. When it was over, I figured if I didn't exist, neither did the final. I got a D. For 6 weeks, my mother wouldn't talk to me. She was convinced her son was immoral, but that was okay because she didn't exist either. I did do well in one course, though. It was a sociology course. I read for the first time Nietzsche's classic work, Monarch Notes. The best part was that we spent 6 weeks on the same quotation. It was, if you place an infinite number of monkeys in front of an infinite number of typewriters, will you get the staff of the Harvard Lampoon? I said yes. I got an A. Senior year was a time of job hunting and applications and the embarrassment of taking QRA. Senior year also meant completing a thesis, and I, like many of us, undertook a massive project, spending weeks in Widener. I tried to discover who financed the Great Wall of China. I wrote 180 pages and came to the conclusion it was a guy named Bob. I won a hoops prize. Unfortunately, I didn't do quite as well on my oral exams, which were in government. I was really nervous, and they asked me to name the last 10 presidents, and I forgot. I tried to ad lib. I named the 7 dwarfs instead. But I got credit for 3 of them. We can also recognize senior year as the time the undergraduate council finally stepped forward and asserted itself. Just as Chairman Eisert had threatened, the council finally played hardball with the administration. Unfortunately, the council lost 5-3 in extra innings. Yet, of course, there will always be those senior bars. Maybe. But that's all in the past. What about the future? What has Harvard trained us for? No doubt many of us will become rich and famous and will send our children to Brown. Reflecting back on our past 4 years, I tried to think of a word which captured the spirit of what this place is all about. And I thought about it, and that word is college. And I went to the dictionary this morning and I looked it up. And I found a beautiful definition, which I'd like to read to you. College, it said, an art form in which bits of objects, such as newspapers, cloth, and pressed flowers, are pasted together for a symbiotic effect, as in a montage. It's beautiful. College. But we must also remember that Harvard is more than just one phrase or a collection of buildings or a group of rocks that give off steam. Harvard, most of all, is people. It's our friends, our advisors, and although they haven't been here with us, it's our professors. I mean, our parents. It's our parents. You're laughing. It just so happens that in one semester alone, I took courses from Stephen Thernstrom, Bernard Balin, and Carlo Rubbia. And when I got back from Europe, I realized that Harvard is also our parents, who have provided us with moral and financial support. Sure, they could have spent the amount of 4 years tuition and bought a condo on Beacon Hill or a small island in the Pacific, but they were wise enough to realize that they were purchasing something much more valuable for their son or daughter: a lifetime membership at the Harvard Coop. In closing, I'd like to read you a meaningful quote from one of Harvard's most well-known personalities, which I feel, Mr. John Galliworth, the book checker at Lamont, which I feel best sums up the Harvard experience. Yep, go ahead, yep. You're all set, yep. Have a good day. Thank you.